Today I'd like to talk about and do a more detailed flip through of this great book, Tarzan, the Centennial Celebration by Tracy Griffin. Now this came out in 2012 from Titan Books. It's a beast of a book and a beauty. It's so tall that I can only barely fit it on one of my shelves. I put the shelf low enough in my bookcase to be able to accommodate its huge size, its height. It's not so thick, it's pretty heavy, it's pretty nice, and let's take a look at it closer up. Well, let's take a look at this bad boy, this beautiful Tarzan, the Centennial Celebration. The stories, the movies, the art, again by Tracy Griffin. This was published in 2012 by Titan Books to celebrate 100 years of Edgar Rice Burroughs and his work, especially focusing on Tarzan particularly. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this bad boy. Here is the cover, of course. I'm going to move it over a little bit so I can fold it all out. Now I want to show you the without the slip cover. Very nice glossy cover design here. And as we enter the book, we see some nice palm fronds, I guess, to show the jungle aspects of this book. Okay, hopefully you can see this all right. And here we have the table of contents. And what this book does basically is, here's a nice foreword by Ron Ely, the late Ron Ely, who just passed away, I believe, last year after a long illness. Seemed like a heck of a guy. Of course, played Doc Savage in the movie Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze. But before that, starred in several movies and then played Tarzan in a very kind of up-to-date, non-monosyllabic Me Tarzan You Jane version of Tarzan in the 60s series. I believe it was from 66 to 68, something like that. In 2 seasons, which I have on DVD, released from Warner Brothers Archive. That's a pretty cool and fun show. Other than being filmed in predominantly in Mexico, a few episodes in Brazil, so it's a little odd to see African animals running around in obviously South American locations. But he gives a nice foreword here. Then we have the author's note, Tracy Griffin, and then a nice picture of the young Edgar Rice Burroughs and some early years photos of him and some of his cavalry days. Captain in the Illinois Reserve Militia in Oak Park, Illinois in 1918. Okay. So after he had started writing. Okay, and then we talk a little bit about some of his early writings. A Princess of Mars. Mindoka. I'm not quite familiar with this one, but cool cover there. And the pulps, little talk about the pulps that Burroughs appeared in, such as Argosy magazine and the All Story, and Tarzan and the Ant-Man, cool cover there. We're going to see lots of amazing covers in this book. And here we have the world in 1912. Some of the events that happened, including Arizona being admitted to the Union as the 48th state, and New Mexico just a week earlier being admitted as the 47th state. Girl Scouts of the USA founded. Missing link of Piltdown Man found in December. Notable births: Danny Thomas, Carl Malden, Jay Silverheels, who played Tonto, etc. And here, Tarzan of the Apes, All Story, got the cover, A Romance of the Jungle from 1912. And then we have some different, how this book is usually arranged is kind of a synopsis of the story with plenty of, cover illustrations, including this wonderful Neil Adams piece of artwork that appears on the Black Valentines that I love so much. And then a little bit of information about the background of the writing. Here we have an earlier Ballantine cover. And the first mass market Ballantine edition there. So Ballantine, of course, well known for its Tarzan books. And here we have some comic adaptations. And then usually there's a little page at the end of each entry for the book about some key facts and information. Won't try not to take too long on this. Tarzan's origins. Some nice art there. Tarzan, also Tarzan. Talking about the different ways to pronounce it. Here's the lovely Margaret O'Sullivan as Jane with Johnny Weissmuller back in the Tarzan, Me Tarzan, You Jane era of the films. Very fun films, especially the first couple are quite well made and ambitious productions for the time. Not a blonde, this Jane, but, you know, plenty attractive. Now we have The Return of Tarzan, the second novel here. Again, a Ballantine cover art by Neil Adams over here, and Gold Key Comics cover by George Wilson. Some more great art here, and again, information about the book. Return of Tarzan comic from DC. The Eternal Lover. Now, The Eternal Lover, not technically a Tarzan story, although it's set predominantly on Tarzan's ranch in Africa, so he is involved in the story somewhat. And here is some information on the covers and about the book, including this really cool picture here. J. Allen St. John. Okay, Beasts of Tarzan, which I read and reviewed earlier this year, back at the beginning of my channel, 4+ months ago. Beasts of Tarzan, very fun. Again, amazing piece of Neil Adams art here. And some facts about it, and the Gold Key comic adaptation. Here's him attacking a crocodile in Robert Abbott illustration from 1969. The Mangani, and we'll talk about the intelligent species of ape that Burroughs invented for this series. The Son of Tarzan. Pretty cool artwork there. Again, this one's pretty well known. Early Ballantine Robert Abbott illustration, cover illustration. And again, we have some ending here with some fantastic Neil Adams art that's on the cover of the Black Ballantines. Korak, or Boy, called Boy in the movies, of course, played by, I believe it was Johnny Sheffield. Yep. Who went on to have his own series, Poverty Row monogram series, Bomba the Jungle Boy, after he grew a little too big to be Boy in the Tarzan movies. Real life feral children, a little talking about the maybe believability of Tarzan being able to be raised by apes, etc. Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. Again, try to move a little bit faster through here. Tarzan and Law at the City of Opar. Boris Vallejo. Again, we got Neil Adams. One of his more odd cover illustrations, but still pretty cool. And again, a whole bunch of cool comic art. Got some Marvel comics here now. Covers. Tantor the Elephant. So Tantor the Elephant here. Ballantine Books cover art by Charles Wran. Jungle Tales of Tarzan, which is a collection of short stories. Very cool art there. Tarzan the Trickster. That looks some more Neil Adams art there. Tarzan the Untamed, shooting an old machine gun at German soldiers as he goes on a rampage, believing they've killed his mate Jane. Again, awesome Boris Vallejo art that's on the Ballantine edition that I have. A little bit about Jane. Tarzan the Terrible. This is where he goes into the land of Pal Udon and meets all sorts of lost race people and this strange kind of Triceratops dinosaur leftovers that are hanging around. Here again, Boris Vallejo's awesome cover painting. Dinosaurs in Africa, and talks a little bit about, isn't this cool? Swimming with a giant dinosaur after him. That's awesome, whatever that is. J. Allen St. John, Tarzan the Terrible. Pardon me as I stick my head sometimes over here to see what in the heck I'm looking at. Tarzan and the Golden Lion. Another Robert Abbott cover illustration there. It's going to be pretty hard to beat this Boris painting, though. Numa, Friend and Foe. And again, Numa the lion, kind of the made-up language Tarzan uses to describe all lions as Numa. Tarzan and the Ant-Man. Again, kind of Tarzan Goes Gulliver, where he finds two warring races of miniature people. Very fun book there. Again, with the great Boris cover. And Gold Key Comics cover art by George Wilcox. Tarzan the Polyglot. Breaking down some of his languages and dialects that he understands. That's quite a bit. Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, with this amazing piece of Boris Vallejo cover art. As he's fighting the boa constrictor there. Much, much better than this Robert Abbott illustration as far as I'm concerned. Some more cool art there. Lord of the Jungle as Tarzan meeting some leftover Knights Templars, having jousting contests somewhere in another lost world, yet another lost world in Africa. Nakima versus Cheetah. Cheetah was in the movies, not in the books. Nakima was his monkey pal in the books. Tarzan and the Lost Empire. Tarzan engaging in gladiatorial combat with another lost world of Roman legionnaires, I guess, that were left over and started their own empire in this little pocket country. The Waziri, which is the African fighting tribe that works, pals with Tarzan, hunts and fights with them occasionally. Tarzan at the Earth's Core, my own personal favorite, mixing Burroughs' Pellucidar series with Tarzan. Just an absolute fantastically fun book. Great Neil Adams cover from one of the more famous scenes as Pteranodon carries off Tarzan to be fed for his for its children, but Tarzan ain't having none of that. And again, in most cover illustrations or comic covers, this is the part that's depicted. Tarzan fighting a giant prehistoric bear there. Pellucidar, letting a little talk about Pellucidar with a cool Roy G. Krinkle cover there from Ace Books. And another one from Tanar Pellucidar at the Earth's Core by J. Allen St. John. That's also pretty awesome. Look at that. Looks more like a dragon than a pterodactyl, but it's pretty dang cool. Tarzan the Invincible. Some more Neil Adams art. And then talking about Opar. Tarzan has some various adventures in Opar. I believe he goes back at least once. And one more time after the first encounter. Tarzan Triumphant. Look at this badass thing. Neil Adams taking out one of those nasty looking jackals or hyenas. They're not striped like hyenas, but they're kind of built like them or drawn like them. Some cool art there, of course, as always. Lost Race Tales. Early Frank Frazetta cover. It's so awesome, this cover. Love it. Tarzan and the City of Gold. Neil Adams, Ballantine cover, which I have. And the earlier Ballantine, 5 years earlier, 1970, from Robert Abbott. A little too much paint sloshed around on that cover for my taste. femmes fatale. Whole bunch of queens and princesses that Tarzan encounters in these various lost worlds. Some of them more evil than others. Most of them imperious and falling for Tarzan eventually. Tarzan and the Lion Man. That's a pretty cool one. Again, Abbott's a little bit surreal with some of his color there. I think I much prefer the Adams cover, Neil Adams cover, with these weird ape, mannish looking apes attacking him, and one blood flying off from a slash from Tarzan's knife. Tarzan's appearance in different covers and from different illustrations. Tarzan and the Leopard Men. We're getting later on in the series now, maybe a little more Burroughs kind of mailing it in a little bit here, although still fun. The Anyoto, the Leopard Men of Central Africa. Tarzan's Quest. It's an interesting one. Another George Wilson Gold Key Comics cover. That's pretty cool. And Vallejo cover, used for the Ballantine Books edition, 1977. Tarzan Immortal, talking about how Tarzan is probably immortal, not going to die anytime soon. I'm not as up on the lore about that as a lot of other Tarzan experts are. I'm not by any stretch a Tarzan expert. I've read several of the books, and I'm pretty familiar with Burroughs' other work, but still don't know everything about what's happening in the Tarzan books. Tarzan and the Forbidden City. Again, nothing's going to touch this amazing Vallejo cover illustration from the Ballantines Books edition in 77, fighting these giant eel creatures. So amazing. Paperback Revolution, talking about how all these Burroughs different paperback editions came out. Tarzan the Magnificent, again, another great Boris cover. And Hubert Rogers cover art of the 1956 Argosy. Argosy Weekly, maybe it was republished. 56. Tarzan the Magnificent. Eyes of Gray. Gray eyes were a prerequisite for heroism in Edgar Rice Burroughs novels. Okay, interesting. So apparently all the various heroes that he created sported gray eyes. Tarzan and the Foreign Legion, again, another awesome Boris wrestling looks like an orangutan or something there. Pretty cool Gold Key Comics cover as well. Tarzan and the Foreign Legion. Again, implacable foes. So talking about some of his recurring foes. Tarzan and the Madman. Another Boris awesome art. I'm just kind of repeating myself over and over. Look, awesome Boris Vallejo art. It's kind of an oxymoron because, of course, it's going to be awesome if it's by Boris. Tarzan Doppelgangers. Interesting. Tarzan and the Castaways. Wonderful Vallejo cover again. Giant Tantor. Now, this, I believe, is the last official novel. Is that right? Yeah. The last in the series, I believe number 24. And it's actually more of a novella with or a short novel with a couple of short stories to pad out, at least in my Ballantine version. Tarzan the Aphasic. Losing his memory, I guess. Tarzan for Children. Tarzan and the Tarzan Twins. Now, he did write this, I believe. And then they did some kiddie versions. Big Golden Book. Wouldn't mind having my hands full of some of those. Tarzan Clubs. Tarzan Clans of America. How to Speak Ape. A glossary of ape English. This is pretty awesome. Tarzan's Africa map of all the different kingdoms he explored. Pretty much throughout the whole continent. Not much in the Sahara, I guess, but pretty amazing map there. From Burroughs' notes, some cool maps and things from his notes. Tarzan of the Funny Pages, comic strips. Jaws of Death. Pretty cool. Some Sunday and weekly art. Tarzan of the comic books. Whole bunch of Dell Comics covers. Wow, that's pretty cool. Dark Horse Comics Tarzan Carson of Venus crossover miniseries. Cover art by Igor Corday. Wow, was not aware of that one. Now, getting out of the novel, so I'll speed through this part because it's not really in the purview of BookTube, I guess, but Tarzan of the Radio. I believe they must talk about the actor Rod Taylor, who recorded a series in Australia of Tarzan radio shows. Tarzan the Films, The Silence, Elmo Lincoln, over here. As far as I'm aware, the first screen Tarzan. A lot of silent films. And of course we have Frank Merrill and Camilla Searle. Lots and lots of silent screen Tarzans. Then the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer era, the MGM films, with Johnny Weissmuller and Maureen O'Sullivan as Jane. Johnny Weissmuller, Olympic swimming champion, medalist, and did a lot of his... Of course, they always managed to get him swimming in each of the movies. The second film, Tarzan and His Mate, it's got some pretty risque footage in there. These are pre-code, those two. Although some of that footage was cut out. Isn't she beautiful? Maureen O'Sullivan, just gorgeous. Tarzan in New York, really fun movie. One of the last 8 MGMs before Weissmuller went to, I believe, what was it, RKO? I can't remember exactly which studio he went to make some more films until he got a little too old for the part. The Saul Lesser era. Here's Saul Lesser there with Glenn Morris, right? Buster Crabbe and Julie Bishop and Tarzan the Fearless were in the 50s now. And Aquanetta and Tarzan and the Leopard Woman. Anyway, Maureen O'Sullivan, of course, was tired of playing Jane, hated the ape playing Cheetah, wasn't really, wanted to get back to more serious acting in the stage, so she passed, and so different women, including Brenda Joyce, different actresses would play Jane. And then, of course, Lex Barker appeared in several Tarzan films, and then one of the best screen Tarzans, Gordon Scott, bodybuilder, and in some of the best films of the era, the Cy Weintraub era, filmed in color, filmed on location in Africa. Tarzan's Greatest Adventure and Tarzan the Magnificent, two wonderful, fun, colorful films. Young Sean Connery is one of the bad guys in Tarzan, Tarzan's Greatest Adventure. Jock Mahoney, more famous as a Western actor, but he played Tarzan in a couple of really good movies. Tarzan Goes to India and Tarzan's Three Challenges. Here he is in Three Challenges facing off against Woody Strode in one of the death challenges. But as you can tell, he's quite skinny here, which is not necessarily a bad choice. But Mahoney got sick with dysentery and so lost some of his muscle mass while he was filming. Then the films kind of finished up with Mike Henry, former NFL player turned actor, who made 3 films playing Tarzan, Tarzan and the Valley of Gold, Tarzan and the Jungle Boy, and Tarzan and the Great River, I believe. And then we have some more contemporary films. Denny Miller played in a remake of Tarzan the Ape Man, which is not very good. Of course, one of the ones that takes the origin of Tarzan a little more seriously, and that's Tarzan, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, Greystoke, basically. Christopher Lambert, Walt Disney's Tarzan, and then Tarzan of television. lots of different series have tried, including Joe Lara, but, the only one of any note really is, of course, Ron Ely's version, which they don't talk about a lot here, despite him giving a introduction to the book. Tarzan of the Stage, I guess there was a musical version of the Disney film. Tarzana, California, where Burroughs established as his home, I guess. And here it is in the early days, and Burroughs writing around. Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, of course, he became a very wealthy man through all his writings, but especially the Tarzan series and merchandise and films, etc. His book plate and doodad. Okay. And this is the doodad colophon mark, which is on the cover of this book underneath there, right? Tarzan the Collectible. Someone with a really amazing collection of Tarzan memorabilia there. Tarzan skateboard of all things, and a lunchbox. Authorized sequels, including, I believe, some by Joe R. Lansdale, but there's quite a few of them. Bunduki. I could have sworn I either saw this many times growing up. I don't know if I bought it. I might have bought it at one point, but don't have it anymore, I don't believe. Tarzan kind of ripoff. Tarzan the Global Phenomenon. Fans and Fan Publishing. Fan Convention, The Dum Dum of the Great Apes. Tarzan and the World Wide Web. Of course, earlier days. It's been a good, 13 years since this was published. Edgar Rice Burroughs, Fantastic Worlds. Mars, Venus. Some of his other cool series. Cave Girl, I'm a Barbarian. Burroughs' later years. So some photos of him, Robert Young and Virginia Bowles at NBC Studios. So palsing around there. And of course we have the bibliography of his works and movie series, further reading, and acknowledgments. And then we're here at the end of this lovely book with, again, the doodad, Burroughs doodad at the end there. So that concludes the flip through of this really nice, beautiful tome. If you're a fan of Burroughs, fan of Tarzan, I highly recommend getting your hands on this. I know some other channels have talked about this book. I know Michael K. Vaughan, of course, has talked about this. I did a great video covering this much more eloquently than I ever would. And I believe I saw this in the grotto tour of at Mark's place on Mark's channel, Richardson Reads. He has this book as well. Whether he's taken a look at it in one of his past videos, I'm not sure. At any rate, hope you enjoyed that little look, and we'll see you next time on the channel.